Welcome to CivilNet. My guest today is Fadi Salem, who is with the Dubai School of Governance and Innovation Center, which is a think tank that is engaged in many programs, especially a project called the Arab Social Media Report. Fadi, thank you for joining us on CivilNet.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to talk about a topic that you're probably sick of talking about, and that is the role of social media in, not just in the Arab uprisings, but in Arab societies. And I want to ask you a question based on our Armenian experience, that in many ways, obviously, social media serves a whole different role in not fully democratic countries. And yet it seems that social media engagement is almost artificial in that it gives you a false sense of accomplishment and engagement. At least here, that's what we feel. What do you think? How is it playing out in the Middle East?
So in the Arab world, if you look at what's happening in the Arab world today, we had three levels, or three, if you dissect the uprisings, we have three levels of what the uprising is all about. There's a demographic revolution. We have a large group of young people coming to the scene and emerging in the different Arab countries, up to 70% around many of the countries. And then you have new norms that are emerging and developing for democratic and economic participation. People are understanding their rights. And then you have a technological revolution of sorts, where more and more people, a critical mass of users, can access these technologies. And in terms of cost and ability to access them and education, you have this huge number of people who are using it. So, in fact, given that in the Arab countries, the overwhelming majority of the countries do not have neither a civil society that functions well, nor a free media that is capable of working without the government interference. And then you didn't have even parliaments that represent the communities in these countries. All these factors enable for people found in these channels, new channels, the ability to overcome all these barriers and connect together and voice opinions and work and mobilize on issues that will enable them to, as we've seen in many countries, even to organize to bring down government.
Okay, that's the upside. Now, is there a downside in that it offers them a false sense of engagement and no real political or social follow-through?
Well, it depends. It's a case by case. So, for example, if you have countries with a critical mass of users on social media that have up to 40% of the population using it, and as we've witnessed, according to our research, that the usage shifted in the Arab countries specifically. In 2010 and before, the usage was primarily on social uses for social media, so sharing, interacting with other social communities, and then moved in 2011 and 2012 to more primarily political uses. So, and then today we've seen it institutionalized into development and economic uses. So I'm talking about the majority of the people using it to mobilize and organize and affect change. So this is according to our research. So it could be the case that in many societies that have other channels for communicating within the society, maybe this new phenomena, if you like, will not enable them, will not empower them enough, because you already have part of the population using an alternative channel. But in this part of the world, you didn't have an alternative, and people flocked, especially the younger group, flocked to it. So in this case, I think that the sense of empowerment, the virtual civil society that have developed in many countries, and taking shape today on the ground, moving away from the virtual world, is actually real. It's not virtual anymore.
Do you find that in this world that started as a virtual world but is now a not virtual world, that the same characteristics carry over? That is, if the virtual world was both a media and a political organization platform, that now that in the real world there needs to be responsible media and responsible political organization. On the other hand, the virtual world doesn't impose responsibility on you. So it's hard to make that transfer from virtual, where you're here, you're not, you say the right thing, completely real or not. In the real world, you must. Is that transfer possible from the virtual to the non-virtual?
I think it's a matter of time, yes. There is an ecosystem developing, and what we've seen is that still today we have chaos, we have total mayhem, if you like, in the virtual scene, and there are no guidelines or no structures, and everything goes. Now, this poses a lot of risks and creates a lot of problems in societies, and many governments and civil society organizations are trying to cope and develop some sort of structures and take the benefits of this new phenomenon. And governments are developing policy guidelines for social media uses by the governments. They're providing new channels for the people to interact through social media. So everybody is adapting or trying to do so in the Arab countries. Now, this will take time. And what we're in right now is a transition. And this transformation from the virtual world to the real world is taking place by awareness, by new structures that are being created and put in place. So it's a matter of time.
Is it possible that just as the social media, particularly in the Arab world, made possible the quick rise of lots of young people and leaders, that at the same time it's because perhaps of social media that the oppositions, especially in Syria, are still fragmented and not unified, because suddenly there are a lot of quick new leaders, empowered, potential?
Well, in the case of Syria, I think you cannot blame social media for what's happening. If anything, the role of social media in Syria has been very critical in terms of providing the information channels, because we didn't have access for the traditional media in Syria. So I wouldn't blame it for the fragmentation of the opposition. In fact, there was neither a civil society movement nor a political culture of organizations that functioned in the opposition in Syria for a long, long time. So, including the Syrian diaspora and expatriates, as well as in Syria, inside Syria. So, this is something that preceded the existence of social media channels. What's happening on social media is a reflection and maybe also an amplification of what's taking place in the real world in Syria. So I wouldn't blame it. It's a reflection. It's a tool that reflects what's happening.
And my last question is about Egypt. As big and important as the role of social media was in up to the formation of the new government, now when people are dealing with issues of governance and not just transformation, transition, revolution, does social media have an equally important role?
I think in terms of the civil society, it will still have a strong role until more structured methods or ways for the civil society to function in the real world will happen. Now, for the governments themselves, and in the case of Egypt, the development of the alternative channels, the real channels for people to mobilize, communicate, like the free media, the parliament that is free, and the civil society movement, will limit the need and the power of social media in this country. This is not the case yet in the majority of the Arab countries, but in the case of Egypt, I think more real alternative that connects a larger part of the society. Although we have in Egypt around 12 million people using social media today, still that's a small part of the Egyptian population. So with new channels, with new real channels, the virtual channels will have limited role in the future.
Thank you, Fadi Salem, who is helping us understand these complicated processes of democratization following the Arab uprisings in the Middle East. Fadi, thank you for joining us on CivilNet.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching CivilNet.